let's get started. We actually had a chance, Dustin and Andy and I, to talk about removing risk when developing a digital product with Beta and their cohort program yesterday. So we had a lot of fun kind of sharing our experiences and in terms of what we see and how to not spend money if you don't need to and avoid risk in developing. Because we have a smaller group, I think it'd be really fun to have everyone introduce themselves so we get a sense of who's all here. Caitlin, I'll start with you. Caitlin's a partner of ours. They're Lighter Capital out of Seattle, Washington. And we've been doing a webinar series with them all last year on a quarterly basis. And we've done one in February. We're planning, and we also did one in April. We're planning one for July. I'll turn it to you, Caitlin, to say hello.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Getz. I'm the head of partnerships and community at Lighter Capital. As Linda mentioned, we're headquartered out of Seattle, Washington, but remote across the country and also in Australia. And our company works with early stage, growth stage companies to provide a debt financing or growth stage capital option. So we've been in business for about 11 years now, worked with 450 plus companies across the States and then also in Australia. So it's been a great partnership with Modern Logic just to kind of go through and cross paths with all the different clients and SaaS and tech, and that's where we love to do work. And so good to join today.
Quick question for you, if I can. What does an ideal client look like for you?
Yeah, we love to work with companies that are, let's say, 2 to 5 years old, and they're in that period of time where they've got revenue positive, they're growing rather quickly, knowing that they need to find a source of capital, maybe before a financing round, equity round, that's going to spur a lot of their sales and marketing efforts. So it's an assertion of cash that's anywhere from a couple $100,000 to maybe up to, in total we can do up to 4 million, but it may be up to $1.5 million. And those clients are typically moving very quickly. They've got a minimum MRR around 15 to 20K is great, and then we do a loan financing round that's a multiple of that. So what's nice about our type of capital and why a lot of entrepreneurs enjoy it and look for our option is because it's all non-dilutive. So we don't take any equity. So we're looking for an ideal client in which, this may be their first startup, this may be their second or third, perhaps they've gone the VC route before, but they're looking at this point in the junction to just take an option that's not going to, cob things up if down the line they want to take a massive round. So all tech companies, B2B, SaaS, they've got some sort of subscription element to their service. So we've worked with a number of companies that then go on to do a major round of financing. So we have a lot of connections then on the VC side to do introductions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll toss it now to our friends at Mesa, Todd, and then Kent, if you want to do a quick intro.
Yeah, sure. I'm Todd Kramer. I'm one of the founding partners at Mesa. Mesa, Minnesota Emerging Software Advisory is a mentor organization. We don't take any equity. We don't pollute our allegiance to the C-level founders of startups. And we help them de-risk their growth by using our collective experience to help them figure out the right path to success. So that's what we do. We've got a lot of different companies that we've mentored over the last 10 years. Many of them have graduated. In addition to that, I also have a day job. I'm an executive at Ericsson and Cradlepoint, which was acquired by Ericsson for $1.1 billion in 2020, and now is a wholly owned subsidiary. So I'm the CMO of Cradlepoint and the head of Ericsson's enterprise thrust at Ericsson in Sweden. So that's what I do as a day job.
Kent, do you want to say hello?
Hi. I do not have a day job any longer.
Lucky.
Congratulations.
I retired a couple of years ago. I've been a serial CFO of emerging growth companies, mostly in the technology sector. And again, part of Mesa, where we do, again, as Todd said, we don't take equity, we don't take any compensation. We advise the CEOs on everything from forming a board to capital raising to go-to-market strategies, and of course technology as well. And it's really been it's been great to have Modern Logic as a partner.
Thank you for that. Tiffany, want to say a quick hello on behalf of Beta? You're muted. Hello.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. My name is Tiffany Singrai. I'm an operations intern there at Beta. I'm just filling in for Kelly Schultze. Yeah. So today I'll just be taking notes and just kind of absorbing all the knowledge from you guys.
That's awesome. I don't know if anyone else wants to continue. Richard, I don't know if you want to say hello. Ryan Throwdor.
Ryan Trogdor.
Trogdor, sorry.
Joke.
Okay, well, let's get started on our, I appreciate everyone that's here. Some of our team is also here, Chip and Beth. I see you're here, Ryan, Dylan. Thanks for hanging with us. Tom Tersh was here. He helped us organize the webinar, so thanking him. But we do want to talk about removing risks when developing a digital product. As I said, we see a lot, and Andy and Dustin in particular, having been engineers for more than 20 years, have seen a lot. So what we wanted to talk about today is a little bit of the who, what, where, why, how questions that your mentees might have, or people within your organizations. And so let's start with who and the what. Like, what should you consider when working with a digital software partner? Who should they be? What skill sets might you be thinking about? I'll start that question with you, Dustin, and then we'll pull Andy in.
Yeah, and in particular, because this audience is very mentor heavy, I think what I'm really interested in conveying is are there things about this you don't know or would like to know from us? So feel free to interrupt. And then in particular, things that we may not know that would help your mentees, or ways that we could support you in your communities, right? As we're really big, as clearly we're sponsoring or partnered with most of the people in this room on giving back and helping sort of foster that next generation of technology companies, especially here in Minnesota, but generally anywhere. And man, if you've been in Minnesota tech for as long as I have, it has really come a long way in the last, even the last 10 years. We're going to mini demo or mini bar 16 next weekend. And I remember when it was like a single room and there was like 2 pizza boxes, and now it's thousands of people, right? So yeah, like the what or the who, so basically what we focus on is helping entrepreneurs launch products and then iterate those products in market so that they can find product market fit rather rapidly. And I think that there is a category of people that can use an agency, and there's a category of people that need to do things internally. But I think most people are a hybrid, right? Most people in the software space could use support from someone like us. Say we have a web solution and you need React Native, right? That's a great place where you'd want to bring an agency that knows how to get you to market with a React Native solution rapidly, but you have existing product ownership on your team, right? That we do a lot of work with people who are in market with content, for example. So imagine one of our clients is a spirituality platform, and they have access to thousands of spirituality, gurus, mentors, that want to do live streaming, that have educational content, and all of that was locked up on the web, right? And we're helping them get that to market in people's pockets, because that's where everyone wants to consume their media these days, right? So that's a good example of a good client. So oftentimes we get questions of, especially with the people you work with who are early stage, sort of 1 to 2 million companies, and do we need to own it all, right? And I think this is a pretty divisive topic, so feel free to interrupt if you disagree.
Well,
with me.
the biggest challenge I've noticed a lot of our firms have, and keep in mind, we work with everything from early stage companies that haven't really fully finalized their product market fit to companies that have gotten product and markets and have maybe $20 million of MRR and everything in between. Companies more successful, companies, with good ideas. So one of the things that's common is they all struggle with how do they really scale out the building of their product, both how do I work with an external development house, which is very common today, or how do I partner? And the biggest problem they have is organizations come and say, well, you got to pay the full boat up front. And they go, well, I can't pay the full boat up front. So is there a way that you amortize the cost of working with those early stage companies so that you grow or you get success when they get success? Have you got any special type of program for earlier stage companies other than we develop it and you pay the full freight up front?
So generally, there's some firms that are taking equity, and that's when you're in a consulting agency. I think that's kind of similar to Mesa. It kind of mixes the direction too much. Like we've taken,
and that's clients, and that's very passe. Now that takes 7 to 10 years for equity to become liquid.
Right, and if you're an agency, if you're familiar with the agency model, you need the liquidity much sooner if you want to scale.
100%. 100%.
So I think for us, generally what we do is we're really good with payment terms, but our model is a monthly retainer model. So we do what's called fixed bid agile. So we take your budget and we basically apply it to however many months you're doing. So it's not upfront. There isn't a huge deposit. It's, I am comfortable spending this per month and I'm going to spend it every month until we ship, or most of the clients continue with us after. And so the real key for us is dialing in a level of productivity that fits their budget and that simultaneously meets their requirements. So we don't do anything along the lines of, oh, once you ship and make money, we'll take a percentage or anything like that. But we find that most people who are post-revenue or in market or funded enough that they can get into this game can do a budget of, say, $20,000 a month, or even some of our clients are in the 80 to 100,000 a month. So it really runs the spectrum. But my goal is to make it affordable, with the understanding that affordable means different things to different people. And one of the things I tell people all the time when I'm talking to younger entrepreneurs or newer entrepreneurs, these things cost $1 million, to build, to launch, to market. And some of that can be sweat equity depending on who you have on your team. But if you can't get $100,000 or $200,000 together to go into market, you're gonna have a real tough time getting your business off the ground at all, right? Just because development is expensive no matter where in the world you do it, right? And I'd rather be upfront and honest about that with people and have them, if you don't have the money, then go get the money, right? Build, like we can work with you to build.
Yeah, I mean, that's easier said than done. Raising capital, as I've done in Minnesota, still is hard.
It's getting better.
Still
the Weber brothers
hard.
did their part, are doing their part, but yeah, I agree with you.
It's still hard. I've raised 40 million. It's very hard.
Yeah.
But I understand exactly what you're saying. The challenge, a lot of our earlier stage, they'll pay 80, 100 million down the road, or excuse me, 100,000 down the road. But today it's maybe 20 or 10.
Right.
It's that when they grow and they get success, you benefit from it. And a lot of organizations are willing to lean into it. They're going, look, it's 80K now, or it's nothing. And they go, well, I can't afford that, so I'm going to have to build a team that can build it for me.
Right.
And that just takes time, and time doesn't work well,
I also think under those circumstances, there's a tendency to then try to do something cheap. Like, all right, then I'll hire overseas resources and have them develop, or kind of get halfway there. And we see a lot of people come to us that get burned. It's not where they needed it to get to, and they wasted the money.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of as hard as fundraising is, if you can't bootstrap and you can't fundraise, you can't build a business, right? Like,
Well, in Minnesota, it takes, you got to get to 20, 30 30K MRR before VCs, have an interest. Out in the
That's right.
Valley, they'll fund an idea with a credible set of players. Here, they won't fund an idea. You got to demonstrate it. So that's this how do I get to 20 or 30 MRR? I mean, you got to have a real product and market. You got to have a real go-to-market plan. You got to have a real company. And if you get to 30 MRR, you can scale up to 50 pretty easy.
Right.
It's getting that first dollar and getting to 20 that's so challenging. And that's a strange dichotomy. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this. It's helpful to understand what stage do you play at, where does your business fit? So we're not presenting to you organizations that just aren't a good fit.
Yeah.
Typically, so part of it is just understanding where you fit.
Right. And typically for those organizations, I'll sit down with them for free and just look at what they've got, what they want to go, where they want to go. And we have done design, tappable prototypes. The idea is if you need to go get money and you don't have any, your chances are probably better going after angel investors or friends and family. And how do we set you up to go do that? And that's something we've helped a lot of entrepreneurs with slide.
Yeah, so have we, and friends and family usually is the route initially that gets them going. And angels are tough too. Sometimes we see those involved. That can really pollute your balance sheet, your equity tables, because a lot of times angels aren't reasonable. But
yeah, I've seen some pretty bad angels
in Minnesota. Yeah,
there's some good
exactly.
My problem is the capital that you have as a founder who doesn't have access to money is time, right? And angels in particular take a lot of time. Right?
They do.
And everyone calls themselves an angel.
It's not just when you get the first money, it's afterwards the time really gets onerous.
And sometimes they want a lot, but there are good angels in town. I think if you want angels, you want introductions more than you want to go through like Twin Cities Angels or something like that, just because the noise to signal to noise ratio is still really low. You've got, some of the other sort of seed funds around here, like Tiny Seed and that I think are a little better, but you have to be introed into those people in order for them to actually spend time. But yeah, I think friends, that's my view. Like I've started 5 businesses here in Minnesota, so I know what the capital environment looks like. But the problem is you can't really do this without money, right? And now you're asking our organization to come in. And our value is we reduce the risk, but because we have a loaded team with, burdened labor costs and so on, there's only so cheap we can get and so much we can find.
Sure. Right? So much risk you can handle. I understand.
Right. But I would love to be able to work with people, more people for less money, but it's just, I think the best thing to do there is, and this is something you get to the what later that I talk about, which is do less, right? So many people have this idea of their product that is this huge advanced thing.
Tell me about engineer founders, man.
Yeah, as an engineer founder myself, I know exactly what product owners.
Well, you sound rehabilitated.
Yes, I am rehabilitated. I haven't coded in 5 years. I have learned to read a P&L and to understand. Oh wait, this whole bottom line number, that's really important. We should probably be tracking this.
Well,
it's time to stop polishing and start selling.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, there's more polish I can apply.
Oh man, if my favorite is, I'll get to Ken in a second. My favorite is we're doing 10,000 MRR, and if I just add this one feature, then we'll be doing 20,000 MRR. It's like, well, features don't actually drive sales. Something a lot of product people don't understand is features rarely drive sales.
Okay, so my question, I guess, is kind of Linda started it, and Dustin also kind of going there around the product roadmap, and the working with Modern Logic versus the founder or the product management or whoever's driving the engineering decisions, the product roadmap decisions. How do you interface those to leverage that go to market for a company or a client of yours?
Andy, do you want to jump in there?
Mute.
Andy, you're muted.
You're muted, Andy.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question, but I'm the technical developer person here. You know, I've been programming for 20 years, started at Adobe. When you mentioned Ericsson, actually, Erlang is a language that was invented at Ericsson. That's kind of been influential in my love of functional programming. So that's kind of my angle into this. So I can talk about things around software development processes, how we try to bring you know, security to our clients because we have a process that delivers and we know how to ship software. Also in terms of your point, Todd, about bringing costs down, we're always looking for ways to be efficient with the products we develop. So we're not reinventing the wheel, but trying to build internally components that we can recycle to bring the development time down. But I have to admit, as much as I try to understand and get inside our clients' needs and their business needs, which I think is another thing we do better than a lot of ways approaching software development, I can't really be an expert on people's businesses. I can try to understand what they're doing and provide the technology that satisfies the requirements they lay out for me. But in terms of like these financial and MRR questions, that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Well, Dustin, how would you answer?
Yeah, so I think the big thing and what pragmatism is one of our values. And I think it's really important. And it's one of the values that startups don't often have, right? And so we tend to work with founders and product owners to introduce that realism, that pragmatism into their product plan. Because, you know, Andy and I built Lightroom at Adobe, right? And when we launched it, it was the first, I believe, new product Adobe had launched in 10 years, something like that, right? Yep. Our budget was, we had a big team of very senior people. Our budget was effectively Silicon Valley level. It was a Photoshop product, so high margins. And we were extremely constrained in terms of the features we could ship year over year, right? And so if you're a software company with 20,000 MRR or 15,000 MRR, zero MRR, and you're not really good at making efficient decisions about the application of your capital, you're gonna really have trouble. And so that's where we can come in and say, this is your product feature list. These are the ones that are really expensive. These are the ones that we think make sense in betting the money on. They might be the expensive ones, but maybe there's cheaper ones we can knock off. And so we prioritize and work with our clients to build a product development plan that is often a fraction of what they really come with us and ask to accomplish. And that's both because things are more expensive than they think, and also because, you know, I think 80% of the waste in software development is just building things people don't need, right? And we're really good at sniffing out, this is worse than you think, you don't need this animation, you're spending too much time over here and over here. This is really how you get to market, so you can start getting your customer to tell you what they're willing to pay for. And that's the other thing, is the hubris that causes you to leave your company and start a new company, right? Your day job, that immediately becomes a negative factor in your ability to manage your company, right? You need to be prideful and self-aware and have self-confidence enough to bet on yourself. But as soon as you walk out that door and start something, you need to be humble, you need to listen, you need to adjust, you need to realize that you're human and that you're mortal and that you can't do everything, right? And often we have to help our clients with that transition, because they don't get there on their own without you all in the room saying, oh,
flexible
by the way,
persistence.
Yeah, exactly. So there's good attributes and bad attributes of that. And when we work with bigger companies, it's much more about, you know, how fast can you go with this fixed budget that we have allocated, right? With smaller companies, we're helping them say, here's the budget you really need to allocate. We can't get lower than this. But with this, here's how we constrain the feature set so that you can actually get what you want in the time frame that you need it. And I mean, the reality is most mobile apps have something like 20 features, 40 features. and the average user uses 2 to 3. All right. So just build those 2 to 3, right? And get to market. And if you can't afford that, then build a prototype.
And they make a purchase decision probably on 5 to 10.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you're going to B2B, it's a little different. With B2B, you can pre-sell in ways that with B2C, which is B2C is our specialty, or B2B2C. If you're in B2B, you can create a relationship pre-product, pre-ship, which I highly recommend, especially if you have a long sales cycle. But with a B2C, it's a little harder. It's much more about validating your market and then betting your capital, because it's going to cost you money to get to the point where someone can pay you. Like with B2B, you can get a letter of intent. There's a bunch of things you can do, and it's very, very hard, but you don't necessarily need a shipped product if you get the right salesperson or your leaders in the industry. All right. So did that answer your question? Sorry, I was kind of rambling. I'm a rambler, so.
I think to Kent's question, though, in our process, very early in the process, we do roadmap creation with the idea that we want to get something to market quickly so we can gain feedback and make decisions. So I think, very succinctly, we need to get something developed and utilized and get a feedback loop very early.
We used to call ourselves a lean development shop, but lean kind of got overused.
Yeah.
But I do.
Well, I also hear you're consultative on the roadmap. I mean, a lot of times, again, roadmaps can be overly polished and overly aggressive and not necessarily market informed. And what you do is you look at the roadmap and you provide your experience, your insights. So you're providing a consultative perspective before you start, swinging the hammers and developing. And that's valuable.
Yeah, and I think the B2C,
a lot of young entrepreneurs make a lot of mistakes, and it's all about de-risking those mistakes so they get to the money phase faster.
Yep, exactly. And I think a lot of the B2C people in particular really spend a lot of time, too much time on and overvaluing polish, overvaluing things like animation, overvaluing things like custom controls and custom components, custom buttons. And the reality is you can get pretty far with what the OSs provide you, what the tool sets provide you, and it looks good and it works well and people know how to use it. And oftentimes you're better spent adding the features with that budget. The example I use is we're working with a bigger company that was launching a new product. It was a Fortune 500, and they spent $80,000 on a single animation. And that worked for them. I mean, they had the budget, but the reality is those are the apps that the founder's been using to basically pin their idea of what quality is to, right? It's the TikToks and the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the reality is these are companies with development budgets in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And you can't compare yourself to that. And they're listening to Elon Musk, who's like, the product must be perfect. Well, that's great. Elon Musk started his businesses with $300 million, right? You're not Elon Musk, right? So this is something, sorry, I'm on my soapbox. This is something I get up, these young companies, it's like, do less. You'll be shocked at how much more you can get done by doing less. And
get to market faster and let the market
faster.
realities define what you need. Yeah.
Let our designer come in and tell you and look at if a lot of people bring their own design, look at your design and say, how do we lean this out so that it's actually something that's easy to develop? Because that's the other thing is
the influence of looking at Facebook and TikTok as this is where you learned mobile development. It's a bad example because there's hundreds of mobile developers on the Facebook mobile app. Everything in there has been gone over with the fine-tooth comb, customized beyond belief.
They built React Native, which is something most people, they built their own tool set for, that tells you how many developers they have. So I see Chip has.
Yeah.
I was going to say, hi, I'm Chip Peterson. From the project management side, I've been in the industry for 33 years, and Apple, Microsoft, 21 of those years in games. And that's what we're kind of bringing to, we talked about the dev side. We talked about, Dustin's coming from raising his own companies and Linda with the sales side. But when we bring them in, we're talking to these people. We've been through this. I've shipped over 200 products. And so I can talk to these people about, do you really need this feature? I was working with one individual and I go, what are your must-have features? He handed me a list of 110 features. I'm just like, that's not going to do it. You're not going to make it. And so we try to guide them on what are your key features, just like you were saying before, is what's going to help you? Is the people going to use this feature? Are tested to use these features? Put a couple things in, and then you can say, take it back to your investors and say, look, already I have this little app. People are using it already. They want to give me money. We've got something here. And we've done that multiple times in just 3 months. Or I come from the gaming world where we used to build a quick game, just a quick prototype, and get it out there and see if people like it and want to keep playing it. If they don't, they don't. Then you stop. You don't keep throwing money at it. Or other situations, that's where the A/B testing comes in, as you show a feature, do they like it? We've gone into, when I was in the game industry, we got a great example I always use is we had one game we thought people would be paying us monthly fee for it, and another one we'd make our money on advertising. When it got out there, the public told us what they wanted. Actually, it flip-flopped. The one we thought would be premium, they were paying, only wanted to do the ads, and the other one was buying coins constantly from us to keep playing for it. So we just said, roll. The audience is telling us what they want. So,
Yeah.
and then if you go overseas, a lot of times, I worked with a lot of overseas developers. I had to be there. You have to sit on them, and that's the one thing, especially for a young entrepreneur.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, I'm going to work with this company from India. You need a PM, a producer that's going to sit on them. They'll just code it to spec. If you have a misspelling in it, it's going to come back with a misspelling. Or a lot of times they go like, I have a great idea, and they add it to your feature for you. So you really have to control them. So.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about team structure, Chip. Maybe you also have something to chime in here.
I've got to jump into my next call, but it has been fantastic to get to know more about your organization. Dustin, thank you so much for all you've shared. Really helpful. I can think of a lot of firms that I talk to and mentor that could benefit from working with you guys. Important thing to understand the right stage where you guys can engage to get the most out of you. That I got a little bit more of an understanding of. Thank you for sharing. And it sounds like what I really hear and I really love is that you guys provide not just the work, you just don't swing the hammers. You provide your consultative insights, your experience, your perspectives, which many of these firms really need. Many of these CEOs really need. They understand the market really well. They understand what they're building really well, but they don't necessarily understand the best practices about what features will make a difference, get them to revenue faster. That's really helpful.
And then
that's not often found.
Right. How do you make changes so that you can find revenue? We didn't talk about, we can add analytics and do A/B testing and these sorts of things. And
Yeah.
How to do that. And that's almost more important than getting to market. Right.
Yeah, it is. Get that telemetry data.
Yeah.
But I got to run. Thank you so much. I will follow up with you again as I find some interested parties, but this has been really helpful.
Nice meeting you, Todd.
Nice meeting you, Todd. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care, Ken.
So I was going to suggest that maybe we talk about the right team structure in a hybrid situation. Do you need a CTO? Where does project management reside? What expertise are you looking for? Chip or Andy, I'm going to let one of you jump in there.
You want me to start, Andy?
You can go with it if you want, Chip.
I'll start it out.
I'm being a bad moderator. I didn't just pick one.
It depends on what you need done, but one thing with us is we have a lot of experienced developers. That's key right there. That really helps out understanding how things could be built and giving people advice. So we can step in on a side of helping you. If you don't have a CTO, we can give you technical help on that. but also we approach it what we like to call the one team atmosphere. It's not like, oh, we got this contract and we're just gonna get it done and throw it. It's like, no, we're part of it. So we have project management on side, and they're pretty much the partner of whoever could be the entrepreneur, that could be the product owner on that side, or the PM on that side. They have to really work close together. And then looking at those features, and then we work together on building out that schedule. What is the most important things to be built first? What's hard? What's easy? We also have a design side, what Ryan could speak to if he wanted to, which is huge. It's very important to be able to, as we said, Todd was saying before, swinging the hammer is, before you even pick that hammer up or even think about the hammer, is let's have it designed out. And it could be, a napkin, or getting it to into XD or and so you can visually see it, do a tappable prototype, show that to people, A/B testing on that to see what they like, what doesn't work, before you even start coding. That can save so much money and so much time, because they could think this thing is so great, it's so great, and they put it in there and people are like, don't even see it, don't even want it, I don't want that, I want that feature. This is my last thing, and I'll turn it over to Andy, is we do agile development. And that's where we can build features every 2 weeks. We have a sprint of every 2 weeks, and you can see it. I've had 2 occasions where I was working, sorry, I'm using my game experience, but we were building a hockey game for the NHL, and we had one feature where it's like, okay, you're going to skate in and shoot. And we had the way the design skating was going to be, and we coded it in 1 week, and it was awful. And it was just like, okay, we didn't waste any time. We made a quick change. And then the next feature was going to be, we were going to put in, these people were going to skate in front of you and block you from shooting. And everyone's like, I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea. We coded it, put it in, everybody loved it. They're just like, oh my God, this changes the game completely. So you never know what is going to happen. So it's in those 2-week sprints, you can get those things in there before you, where I used to do 6 months development, and then you show it and people are like, bleh. After 2 weeks, you got something to show and go, hey, take a look at this. What do you think? So some of the stuff I'll throw it to Andy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I can riff on some of those themes. One idea we've talked about amongst ourselves is, as an entrepreneur, what are the important things that you maintain control of? And most of our clients are not technology companies. Their business is in something else. And so it's really important that they maintain control and expertise in those things that are core to their business, like whether it's content generation or a marketplace or some kind of service. That's what the entrepreneur needs to focus on, that's the key thing of their business. We're providing a tool that enables their business to succeed. The way that we do it isn't core to your business. So that's why I feel like it's okay for us to come in and advise, like, these are the technologies that we recommend you use. This is the way we do things. We know it works. And it may not have been what you would, as the entrepreneur, would have come up with, because, well, you're not an expert in technology. And also there are a lot of ways to solve technical problems, but we're going to provide a simple, efficient way to solve them for you for now. And we're an expert on the way that's done. And also, kind of to riff on that, we do agile development in these sprints. It does allow you to pivot if you need to, because we don't plan detailed work out more than 2 or 4 weeks. And if you couple that with analytics, that means you can start to measure how people are responding and actually look at the data and have that help guide your development. So if you're trying to raise up the nose so that you're revenue positive, we can actually provide data that shows these things work, these don't. Before you add a feature, actually do an experiment where some users see it, some don't, and see if that feature actually has any lift. If it doesn't raise your core metrics, then don't even bother polishing and pursuing it. It's maybe a dud, or maybe it means you do need to polish it more to actually bring it to a point where it has value. Any other thoughts, Dustin?
Yeah, I'd just add that one of the things we also do is we help people with their teams. So, either everything from evaluating your internal team to working with you to do interviews. And one of the things we did with our tech stack very deliberately was we picked a tech stack as our base recommendation that supports the business instead of the technologist. And what I mean by that is you can hire for it. It's relatively affordable to code in. It's something you can build and maintain for a long time. The technologies we pick are not cutting edge. They are not, the next fancy thing. In fact, we actively avoid that. Not saying we're coding in COBOL. We're picking modern technologies that have a lot of support, that are built in languages that there are a lot of developers who know them. So you're going to hear people say, oh, we should code in Go, and we should be using Flutter, and we should be using this thing or this thing. And the reality is no, you shouldn't, because there's 3 people in the city who know it, right? They're all $300 an hour. You can't, you're never going to be able to hire. But you know what you can hire for? JavaScript, which is why we use it for almost everything. It's a 22-year-old language that is still very modern, that every developer knows, right? And so we help people make those choices too, because when it comes to picking your technology, if you're not a technologist, you don't know what impact these choices are going to have on your future business, whereas we do, and we can help you. Some people make the wrong choice and then have to rewrite. And that is the dumbest, most expensive thing you can do, is have to rebuild your product from scratch. And the problem is, if you pick your own developer, or you have your own product person, or you have a technical co-founder, you really need to make sure that they're thinking about the business first, because your technical co-founder, I've seen so many technical co-founders pick languages because they wanted to learn them, or because they thought they were cool or hip. And then they end up with a business that has 5 open recs for senior engineers that they can't fill because they don't exist, because they picked a technology no one knows that they thought was going to be big.
I've been guilty of this. It's really fun to learn new, exciting technologies. But as soon as we started locking in on this JavaScript, React Native architecture, it's really allowed us to zero in and settle. It doesn't change every year. It's actually really exciting now for me, a new perspective, to know that we have a stable infrastructure. Also, our cloud deployment strategies are similarly stable, centered around Amazon Web Technology and all of their microservices.
Yep. And helping people pick a cloud as well, right? A lot of people want to go to Google, because Google, if you're a startup, offers a lot of credit and a lot of free compute time, but they're substandard from across the board in terms of the services they provide. They immediately start limiting what you can do right out of the box, and it just gets worse and worse the deeper into the business you go. Whereas an Amazon might have slightly bigger upfront cost, but it gets you something that both has the lion's share of people to maintain it and a technology stack that's going to scale into the future. Now, if your Microsoft house, Azure is really competent. I won't crap on Azure. Azure is really good. It's just not our core expertise. But I see a lot of startups choose Google and use Firebase, and then they're just a mess, these projects, and they need a lot of help and a lot of work and a lot of investment to fix, because because of those credits are so lucrative. But the reason Google is offering so many credits is because their cloud stinks and they need to incentivize people to use it, right? Whereas Amazon, they do have a good credit program. You just have to keep digging and find it, right? And there are ways of getting your Amazon bills down. So that's the other thing is, choose your cloud. So many founders have sort of preconceived ideas about technology, especially if they're not a technical founder, that we kind of need to deprogram a little bit and say, okay, let's think about this from a business perspective and not from a technologist perspective. And I think that's one of our unique things is we're not just order takers. We're not going to build it on Google because you asked us to, unless you're already in Google, at which point we're going to help you because rewriting is the most expensive thing you can do. But if you're not, we're going to be very opinionated about the choices you can make so that you can focus on the core value of your business and not on, oh man, we used Ruby on Rails because we thought it was easy to code on, but there are no Ruby on Rails developers left because they all migrated to Go and Node, right?
So Dustin, let's kind of wind down with when and how to engage. But before we do that, I want to ask if anyone has any specific topics or questions or comments before we jump into that.
Yeah, Dustin, one of the things you mentioned, and maybe I'm reading around picking a technology in a platform with that's probably not the right business fit. And if you do that, and then the customer's already done something, gone down a path, started development, maybe has minimum viable product or product at market, and you come in and say, this isn't going to scale. How do you coach them through that? That, you know, if they're on the wrong, if they're on Google versus Amazon, you know, you can't pile on and you can't put lipstick on that pig. It's still going to be a pig. And how do you know, they might be able to get to 10,000 or 20,000 MRR, but it's not going to support them at 100,000.
Yeah. So there's sort of two major things there, right? So the first question is this going to be viable to scale your business on in the long term? So if you pick Google, you can build a scaling business. It's possible. It just kind of puts you a little bit on the back foot. If you used all of Google's out of the box technology to get to market faster, you now have to unwind all that. So we're going to work with you to create a plan to unwind it, because if the alternative is a rewrite, that is lost time, lost money, lost everything. You're basically going to pause your business for X number of months and not accomplish anything. And no business, it's very hard for businesses, especially small businesses, to survive that. So my first bit of advice I give people is, no matter how hard up you are, try very, very hard not to rewrite, right? That said, if you are in a position where you have to rewrite, hopefully you're post-revenue, because if you're not, it's going to kill your business. It's super hard to do right. And you can't scale it. Say you're going to market with a B2C and it only scales to 100,000, but you start to see success. So you're a social network, you start to see success at 20 million users, right? A dating app, for example, we've done some dating apps, like their success metric starts at 20 million DAU, right? Daily active users. If you can only scale to 100,000, you literally can't be successful with the technology stack you choose. And after we've exhausted all the alternatives, what we recommend is creating a roadmap, a slow roadmap that moves pieces of your technology off of the main, off of the thing you need to move, by basically cutting pieces out and creating what's called microservices or functionless or serverless technology, so that we're moving little pieces and isolating those pieces and continuing to move your business forward, maybe at a slower pace alongside that. It's very expensive, but we don't recommend pausing and doing a full rewrite ever, because you're not in a position where you can take 6 months and do that, unless you have a lot of capital and you can do things in parallel, which is really rare with any business, unless you're doing 100 million in annual revenue. And even then, the CEO of a $100 million company does not want to do two things in parallel, right? It's just.
I'm a financial guy, and I've lived through this a couple of times in my life that, we're going to rewrite it on a new, and it's always takes twice as long and costs twice as much as you think going in. So,
And honestly, I think it's pretty rare that the problem is this thing top to bottom is broken. Often you're talking about optimizations and the database is missing indexes. Sometimes it just takes someone to carefully look at what's gone on with your deployment. You're running out of memory. This isn't the sufficiently scaled instance. So that becomes like a DevOps problem to make sure you're deployed correctly. Also, you need like a database expert to make sure you have indexes and your queries are performant. And then ultimately you end up where Dustin described, where you're going to need to do microservices, deployments, where you transition, you have two APIs doing the same thing. And then one night at 2 a.m., you do a migration and you cut over from endpoint A to endpoint B. And no one using the platform knows that happened. And you have to do that over and over. That is the ultimate end game to really get you to scale. But there's things you can do before then. And this I think, going back to the architecture we like to deploy, is it might be a little oversized for the startup that has 10 users, but most of the technologies we deploy, we're going to scale up to 10 million and still be standing. You're not going to have to do that kind of breakdown into microservices until you go beyond that point. And hopefully at that point, you're revenue positive and you can afford to do that work.
Right. It's about making the right choices between what we call technical debt, right? So debt isn't bad, right? Lighter capital's in here. Debt can be good if you can accelerate with debt. And technical debt is the same, right? It's something that you need to pay down in the future. No project, no startup project should have zero technical debt. You just need to make sure you're taking the right technical debt with the right interest rate, because if you pick the wrong platform technology, that will kill your business. That's like taking a loan at 50% or something, right? Whereas, if you take a better bet on, say, okay, we're going to make this choice, but we're going to isolate it so that we can replace it later, but we can get to market a month faster. We help people make those decisions all the time. But yeah, I think like when I hear this is a problem with technologists who don't understand business, that you probably ran into, Kent, which is the hotshot technologist always thinks they can rewrite it. They always think it's easy. They don't really, and technologists are notoriously bad at estimation. They don't think about all these edge cases, like we have to keep the thing running, we have to migrate the data. And so, typically if a senior technologist comes to me and says, we need to rewrite it, my typical response as a business owner is you should start rewriting your resume, right? Because that is a terrible thing for anyone to listen to. And it comes usually it's coming from a drive by the technologist to say, I do not personally like working in this because it feels messy and I want purity and I want this thing to be easy to maintain and I want all these things. And it's like, yes, that would be great if we had unlimited capital to make your life easier. But the reality is all shipped products are messy, right? I worked in the Photoshop code base at Adobe. At the time, it had more lines of code than Windows, Microsoft Windows. And it was code, some of the code was 15 years old, but it was still working. The person who comes in and says, hey, we should just rewrite this because it'll be easier to maintain, that is not a person you want in management of your technology, right? And unfortunately, you see that a lot, those behaviors a lot with technical co-founders and CTOs that don't understand business or that haven't lived through it or killed a project.
Or
right?
the first thing they do when they come in is they want to rewrite everything. It's not invented here, or territorial imperative. Like they want to make their mark, and the easiest way to do that is say the last person was a complete screw up and I have to throw this all out.
Yeah,
that's not what's going to be right for business.
But I definitely feel your pain, and I say that with love because I was that technologist once when I'm in my 20s, and I almost killed a product rewriting it.
Dustin and I together.
And thankfully we shipped it, and it was a good, we got it to the place it needed to be because the company we had effectively unlimited capital to get it there. If we were a startup, it would have been a very different story, I think. So.
Yeah.
We have about less than 5 minutes. I had suggested we talk about when to engage and how. I guess I'm going to kind of just suggest, what would you guys like to share in closing, and touch upon those two questions, if that makes sense. When to engage, like right soon, right?
I think for me, the time to engage is, either when you're thinking about your technology or when you're struggling with your product post, right? We'll sit down and talk to pretty much anyone, right? And it doesn't hurt to take an hour out of your day as a founder and have a conversation with me, or have a conversation with Andy, or have a conversation with Chip about, here's your product schedule, here's what you have in market, and here's where you are, and get some honest advice from very senior people about what we think you can and can't do. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to engage with us, right? So I think the time to engage with us is as early as possible, before you think you need to, because we're going to help you create a plan where we could potentially come in, but we're also going to say, evaluate where you're at and be really honest about and transparent about where we think you need to be. And that's just part of our ethos, is doing the right thing and helping people do these right things for their products. And that's what leads to us having a really solid reputation and working with a lot of great people, is, we're in it to provide value regardless of whether you engage with us. Now, we want you to engage with us, but we're also not going to take your money if it's not the right time to take your money. And if we're not the right firm for it. And so I think that's what I would say is, if you're thinking, hey, maybe I should outsource this, or maybe my team isn't capable of this, or hey, I have a new channel. Maybe mobile, or maybe cloud, or maybe web. Maybe that's a good strategic next step for me. That's the time when you can bring us in, have a coffee, have lunch, have a Zoom meeting, and we can tell you, hey, here's what we think with our expertise, launching these things constantly, right? That's what I would say. I don't know. I just work here.
Yeah. I don't know, Chip, anything to add, Andy?
Andy, you're muted again.
Oh yeah, my dog kept barking. I would say we're eager to work with you when the time is right. If you're not sure, like, is this even a product that people are going to want to use? I'd say don't build it yet. There are ways to assess through like prototyping, even paper prototype. Go to user testing. Actually find out, is this something that has value to other people besides you as the entrepreneur? Because of course, this is your idea. You're in love with it. You won't think everyone will. But often it's much harder than you think to get other people to buy into that idea. And then, in terms of what it's like, often once we've had that initial conversation, sometimes we'll have like a pre-production phase so that we can actually spend some time. If there's a cost associated with it, that buys us the time to deeply understand the project we're getting into. So rather than just throwing out a number saying, oh yeah, you can have our luxury model, $300,000, we actually going to take the time to understand what it will take to build a solution for you. And that means we have a deep understanding of what we're getting into. And that really enables us to do a good job. And also is what provides us the ability to see the whole scope. So we're not going to run out of budget and realize, oh, you know what, we're only a third of the way done. I guess we didn't build it and leave. And that is a risk you take if you just hire an individual consultant, like a freelancer. If the budget's run out and they didn't do the work, they're not going to keep working after that. They're going to just stop.
Even
answering
hourly
your
or fixed bid shops, they'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think there's an incredible amount of value in working within a structure, a dev team that has structure, and that very much reduces risk. That's pretty much Chip, your focus in terms of weekly meetings. You've got a team of devs that are consistent. We're not changing development people in and out. That structure is really important, I think, when we're working on new ideas.
Yeah, and a lot of startup people want some of the structure fractionally. Like, you don't want to hire a PM full time, right? Because you don't need one. But we have one full time. We have designers full time that you don't need to be paying full time for. And so often it can be really affordable because you're getting 5 to 10 people for that monthly retainer that you would only be able to get 2 people for full time. And so we can really leverage that dollar in a way that amplifies it. And lowers your risk. But, if you have half your product team on board and you have people managing overseas and whatnot, that's a very different scenario. Most companies, they need low risk. And that is worth spending a little extra money on. All right.
So we're up against 5 o'clock. Before we wrap up, again, I'll ask, does anybody have any questions or comments that you'd like to share before we close? Kent,
No, I'm good. Thank you. It was informative. I'm glad I was able to join.
Time to go enjoy the hail that we've got here in Minnesota right now.
For me as well, this has been a wonderful session. I appreciate how you guys have built your company, and there's clearly passion and all the expertise. I mean, this is super valuable. So thank you for tagging me in to join, Linda. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Caitlin. And thank you, Richard, Shahini. We're glad you guys joined us. We are planning to host a monthly webinar, so stay tuned as we pull topics together. I believe we may be talking about the growth of e-commerce and how digital has a play in that in our our June webinar. We're getting that shaped up. I'm open, send, if you have thoughts on, I'd really love to have a team of people sit down and talk about whatever. Let me know that, and we'll try to pull guest people in and build a conversation.
The next lighter capital one is on scaling product, right? So I think is that in July. So that's going to be really awesome too. Like the lighter ones are always great. So
In
All
fact,
right.
Kent, you might have an idea. I'm going to put a question to you that I'll follow up in email. Do you know anyone that could talk about getting to market, scaling their product as sort of a guest panelist that Dustin would moderate?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm thinking of yeah, let's go offline and talk about it.
that sounds good. That sounds
Okay.
really good.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's really nice to get those real life stories. That's what,
And he's a data geek, and he's a
Okay.
I love data geeks. It'll be a fun conversation. All right.
just-
Thanks, everyone. Have a
thank
great
you.
day.
Have a
All
good
right,
afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye. Team,